This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Into a Friday morning here at AM 1450 WDLB. If you're listening live on radio, you know that already, but you could be watching us on Marshfield Media Access. That's the former MCTV. Now watch for Marshfield Media Access, rebranded under their new logo here and now taken over by the City of Marshfield with their community channel. Still on $9.89 on your Spectrum digital tier, $9.89, $9.90, and $9.91, same three channels, but operating under a different management and rebranded. So we thought we'd pass that along to you here on WDLB so that you understand where to look or why we're referring to it as such. And again, as I say, if you're watching us, you probably already know some of the things that we're going to talk about. You have the benefit of knowing how this all turned out before we get a chance to talk about the things that we talk about on this program. So that's one of the things that happens when you get ahead or archive the video, is that you understand what's going on. Today, the reason that we're on video is because we are on the final Friday of the month, which is the time when we visit with Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here.
How's your April spring going here? Getting into the groove now?
Yeah, it's going good. We're busy, but that's a good thing for some things. But it's going really good. We've been, making some changes at the department, doing quite a few promotions. We've got Joe Zurfluh here. Lieutenant was just recently promoted to investigative lieutenant. So we figured we'd bring him up and give him an opportunity to be on the radio. He has before. He's kind of a veteran. But now with the new position that he has now, we can talk about that a bit, and had an investigation that we're currently working on into an infant that was killed recently that we're still working on that. Been a busy April, but things are going well.
Just briefly here on the promotions and department, was this something that you were looking at doing? Is it a shakeup, or is it a rebranding or a reassignment, or what are you doing at the department?
We looked at where the best fits for leadership were at the organization, and really concentrating on our jail. Our jail has 4 shifts similar to a patrol, but there was no leadership back in the jail as far as somebody being assigned to a shift, as we had leads, and then we went away with those in the past. And we felt that as we did our employee survey, talking to people back in our jail, our corrections officers, they're looking for leadership back there. So we felt it was something that we needed to move forward with, so each shift had somebody that they had as a supervisor. Again, similar to what we do in the patrol side of things. So we moved forward with having each shift having a jail sergeant. We just completed those promotions this week, promoting Stephanie Montag and Terry Johnson, both veteran corrections officer, doing an outstanding job back in our jail. And so now we have 4 jail sergeants back there, so there's some leadership going on in every shift. On the patrol side of things, we're adding patrol sergeants. We used to have them, and then we move forward to having patrol lieutenants, and then discontinue those positions. Again, talking with our staff, looking at having a constant leadership on the patrol side of things, felt that it was a way to go. As far as when your lieutenant's off, you had to pay somebody to be a shift commander, and looking at other organizations similar to ours, felt why don't we bring this patrol sergeant positions back, and then that leadership is always going to be there on the road, in the office. So we've got somebody available to answer questions, to take charge of situations that come up. So the first 2 people that we reinstated as sergeants, they were sergeants before. And then when we went to the lieutenant process, Matt Souza and Scott Drew, we just reinstated. And we worked with our Deputy Sheriff Association because they're contracted positions within our labor agreement. And I'm real happy that we sat down and talked with the powers that be in our association drafted a letter that we can just reinstate them. So they didn't have to go through a process again because they already had the position. So it just made more sense to just reinstate them. But we want to work with our association to make sure that they're okay with that, so we don't get a labor grievance coming down, later after we made that appointment. So we worked that out, and they're the first 2 patrol sergeants that we reinstated, and now we have 3 more openings, and we're doing a promotional process for that. So hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have 3 people named to those positions, and we'll be moving right along.
Well, thank you for the in-depth explanation. But as far as a citizen is concerned, it sounds to me like a lot of people just changing rank here. I don't see a lot of real changes in what's happening other than maybe some chain of command. Yeah,
that'd be a fair way to say that. The chain of command is very, if you look at any law enforcement agency, that's very prevalent there. We mirror, the military side of things, and, it really comes down to leadership. Who's in charge, out there, whether it's in the road or the jail. Now we've established that pretty clearly, that we have some good leaders out there that can answer questions not only to just the public, but to, other law enforcement officers, other deputies working with other agencies. We've got that clearly defined, and that really sets the face of the organization. When you have your leaders out there and that established chain of command, people respect that.
Talking with Wood County Sheriff Tom, I knew it. I knew it was going to do it. I knew it. Yeah, I've been saying it for so many years.
Yeah, you have. We'll give you that one.
Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker, and I even thought about it before I said it, and I said it anyway because it becomes a reaction. Mm-hmm. And you can too. 384-2191, 384-2191 here on this final Friday in April, coming to you on Marshfield Media Access and also live here on WDLB Radio. The things that are going on. How many people do you have in the jail employed? I mean, you talk about 4 shifts. Mm-hmm. You now have 4 sergeants. Mm-hmm. So
very similar to patrol. I think there's 5 corrections officers per shift.
That seems like a lot. I've never been at your facility to see.
You'll have to come down for a tour.
Yeah, so I'd rather have that than an actual incarceration. Thank you.
We could arrange that too if you'd like.
You'd like to film that.
Probably. That would get good ratings, I think. I really do think, Jeff.
Yeah, at home it would. Mine, anyway.
Well, actually, if you look at, staffing levels, we were, looking, going on that employee survey, we were going down to 3 corrections officers at times, and we're supervising over 100 inmates, and that's a lot because you have one person. Like I said, I think you should come down and do a tour so you know what we're talking about. We have a jail control area, and that person is the busiest person. They're sitting in a room similar to this, and with monitors, having the whole jail on video, and then you're dealing with the public if people are coming in to visit inmates. If somebody's just bringing some bond in for an inmate, or just anything like that, they're very busy. Then you have 2 other people that have to run both sides of our jail, the Huber area and then the jail floor itself. It wasn't working. I mean, they're just so busy. They're doing a really outstanding job getting their cell checks in, that we do every half hour. And then if somebody's on a suicide watch, then it's every 15 minutes that we're checking. So they're doing a very good job with that, but they're running ragged. So we changed that, and we're making sure that we always have 4 corrections officers working at a time. And then I have to tell you, we have 100 inmates that we house out of county. 25 this year we sent to Adams County, and we've always had a contract with Wapaka for 75 inmates there. And the public should know that 2 things. One, the cost of that. It's about $1.6 million a year. And number 2, those 25 inmates that we sent down to Adams County as safekeepers, we filled that already. It only took probably less than 4 months to fill that. We were hoping to have a little bit of space because we have space issues in our jail. It's already filled. So next year's budget, we're going to have to look for another facility to house more inmates. And I know we talked about that, and that's something that I'm going to keep talking about because there's definitely a need for a new facility, and that's going to come down to our working with our county board, making giving them the correct information. Like what these costs are, and the public should be aware of that our jail. I just went to a training in Denver that the National Sheriff's Association put on. Very, very valuable training, and we talked about jails. And when the overcrowding issue isn't exclusive to Wood County, but when you're talking about possibly building a new facility, you have to take a lot of things in consideration. Number one, what is your jail population, and how much room do you need to expand if you're going to, as far as inmate population? And then you look at the revenue sources. We could house inmates from other facilities as well. But you have to figure out what is that right number where we're bringing in revenue into our county, but you don't want to go too big, which I found that to be very interesting to have, people talk about, oh, you don't want to build a 1,000-bed facility because you might fill it, but then someday your contracts might not be available and then you're going to have empty space. So you have to really take a lot of things in consideration if we're going to go that direction. But it's going to be something I'm going to continue to talk about and, work with our county board just so they're aware of, what the situation is. Our jail is over 30 years old. And the training that I went to, that's about the life expectancy of a jail. And you should start taking a look at either remodeling or looking at a new facility.
It doesn't sound like that old compared to what most of us citizens would think of for buildings or for use. But as you mentioned, this is not unique to us. The incarceration problem goes all the way. It starts at the county level and blossoms all the way up into the prison system. I mean, they're constantly short, overcrowded. And we talked on this last month of why that is, what we think is causing that, and whether or not that's going to be, as you said, a wave that's going to continue, or at some point in time will hopefully start to turn this thing around a little bit where we're not incarcerating half our population, it seems like, for one thing or another.
Right. I agree.
I've advocated for a little less incarceration, but unfortunately people have this throw the book at them, 3 strikes. You go back through time and you figure out how we got to where we are right now. When you're if a third strike is a candy bar being stolen, it's still a third strike, and there you sit, with somebody who's now 3 squares a day in an orange jumpsuit, and you're paying for it.
Right.
And they're not producing anything.
Right. Well, and that's where, we have to take a different approach in rehabilitation. We have to look at ways that we can help people that are in our facility for making mistakes in our community, but we want to do our best to make sure they don't come back. And then, establishing programs within our jail, and that's a challenge too because of the space needs that we do need. It'd be nice to have more programs in our jail, but we don't have the room to have a program. We have a library, and that's the biggest room where we could put more than one inmate in, whether it's a church service or an AA meeting or an NA meeting or something along those lines. But that's hard to do with our jail population because we don't have an area large enough to put multiple inmates in. So, that's another, space needs and a concern or an issue that we have with our current jail.
The way you make it sound, and you've heard people in the public say this before, you're getting into that library and a workout area, and it sounds like a country club atmosphere is a term that they use for it. But unfortunately, what you've got is people who have time on their hands, and it makes it dangerous for the guards. Correct. Who have these people who are like walking a dog in a pen, you got to let them get some energy off. Right.
We have a small exercise area and, like I said, a small library, but there's a lot of limitations on our current facility. And that's where, like I said, the rehabilitation comes into play because we want to provide at least an environment to serve their time and then get programs available so they can, connect with things outside of our facility so they become successful. The goal is we don't want them back. We do not want them back, but unfortunately that seems to be happening. So we need to take a different approach and focusing on rehabilitation while we have somebody in our facility. I think that's the way that we need to go, and that's why we do have a mental health provider. I know we talked about that before, and we'll have her come up on a radio show sometime this year and just talk about what she's doing in our facility. I'm very, very happy we have somebody putting 40 hours a week in our jail that she walks the jail floor, and if people are having an issue, she can sit and talk to them immediately. or bring them into her office and talk to them about, okay, what's going on? What issues are you having in our facility? I mean, you're not going to sleep well. That's you're not at home, and we're not providing, plush beds or things like that. But there's a lot of stressors that people go through while they're in our facility. And she talks about that and helps people transition while they're in our facility and do their time, and then tries to connect them with people outside the facility so they're successful. You brought up a very good point. When you have people in our facility, you have to look at the safety of our corrections officers as well. And when you're going down to those low numbers of working, that's unsafe environment. So that was another big change why we made, hey, we're going to make sure that we have 4 people working here all the time. And, making sure that our patrol deputies are spending time back in our jail too, helping out.
As far as the mental health program at the Wood County Jail, that was in part response to we've had a number of suicides here over the past couple of years too. Evidently, people have been asking, what's going on over there? What's the problem? And so you've tried to address that in a sense that you get these people calm down, or at least be realizing that this isn't a life sentence here. You don't have to take your life. I don't know what's going on at home, and I don't know if you're strung out on what your mental health is, or which way you're headed here, or what you're thinking, but you've been the result of a lot of people who have had other issues. Right.
No, and that comes into like what we've been talking about, the mental health aspect of our inmates, and that's when, I'm very happy that we moved in the direction of having a mental health provider, a counselor in our jail. We're also partnering with UW Stevens Point and having social workers coming in interning with us that have an interest in corrections and inmates' mental health. So that's something that we're expanding. We also got a grant from the Legacy Foundation down in Southwood County that gave us $50,000 to expand this program and keep this program moving forward. There's a huge need for this. It's unfortunate that a lot of our corrections facilities, a lot of people that have mental health issues, they feel that that's the best place for them. It's not. I mean, we don't have all of the mental health providers. We're lucky, I think. I believe that we're probably in central Wisconsin, and with our jail, I think we're the only one that has a full-time mental health provider on staff. And I think everyone should, but I think the other direction that we need to go is if somebody's having a mental health issue or concern, jail is probably not the best place for them. I mean, we only can do so much. There's got to be some other ways to look at it, and that's a big question. I don't have the answer.
We don't have, as a citizen, I don't want them walking around amongst us. No. But then again, when I hear about some of the things that some of the people have done, I think to myself, my God, that guy was capable of that this whole time, or he was in that kind of frame of mind that he would, or person who would do things, whether it's puppies or babies or whatever it is in this area. You as law enforcement are dealing more or as much with mental issues now as you are with criminals per se, criminal activity. It may lead to that, but people in Wausau, the guy burned down a laundromat because they wouldn't let him sleep in there anymore. I mean, obviously he had a problem that was bigger than doing his laundry. Right. Or took down a whole building and a couple of businesses out with it. You are dealing with people now when you come up to them on a different level than what you did years ago.
Right, and we've talked about this before too. The mental health training law enforcement gets now CIT, crisis intervention training, crisis intervention team training. That's huge. I know I've had Doug Christensen on the radio here before, but he pushed that, several years ago, just questioning why these changes happened. Why aren't we having as much involvement with, when somebody is being committed for a mental health issue, and, working with crisis and coming up with ideas. We figured out that, okay, we have to take a different approach here, and we need to start training our deputies and law enforcement officers differently when they're dealing with somebody that is having a mental health concern or issue. A lot of our calls of service revolve around that. And my goal is to have every deputy trained in this 40-hour training by the end of the year, and we're really close. It took 5 years to get there, but it's just something that is so needed in law enforcement, to taking that approach. Yeah, you need to talk to people differently. You need to identify at least some indicators that somebody has a mental health concern, and then convey that information to crisis and human services, so they can provide the treatment options, or at least some help that goes beyond what we can do.
Talking with Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2191. He has a guest with him here who's been patiently waiting for an opportunity to talk, and we'll talk with him and more. You too, hopefully, coming up. Don't go away. AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program for this final Friday in April, coming to you on Marshfield Media Access, channel 989 on your Spectrum digital tier. They also have channels 990 and 991. Check them out for government channels, things that are happening around the city. There's programming that you can also provide. If there's something that you know of that's happening in the community, they'll help you to get it recorded, and they can air it on their program, or on their channels. And also they have a Facebook page, and now Marshfield Media Access, or the YouTube channel is, again, Marshfield Media Access. That's the new term that we use here, as opposed to MCTV. Change of branding for the media here in Marshfield. And this final Friday, we talk with Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker here this morning. You can join us, 384-2191, live on the radio, 384-2191. We talked about this last month, but you said that now this has actually been decided about courthouse security. How is this for people in Marshfield coming down that haven't been there a while going to affect things? How does it?
Well, it's not going to affect anything immediately. The county board last week voted on providing funding for personnel to get this program going, and they voted on it, and they passed it 19-0, which I was very pleased that and happy with our county board to take this matter on and number one, get the equipment for it. And now they looked at what information we provided and what it's gonna take to run this, and they passed it. So we're really happy and grateful that they did that, came together and voted on it and moved forward with it. So the next step is now it's going to come back to us. Since we do have the funding, we've got to get the program going. So we expect a start date to have everything going. Goal is late September, early October. We have to hire 3 people. The first person that we'll do is we'll promote a lieutenant who's going to oversee the entire program. We felt that was the most important position because somebody has to run it. And putting it on one of our current supervisors like Joe wouldn't have been fair because it entails so much work and so many things, so many components are it's just not the courtrooms, it's the entire courthouse. So how it's going to look once it's going, we're going to have the front entrance of the courthouse. We'll have scanning equipment there, and that'll be manned by fully sworn deputies. So the higher volume of traffic coming in for court appearances, usually in the morning. So we'll have at least 2 people working that just to make sure things are coming in, or people are coming in and they're getting into court smoothly. So there'll be plenty of notification out to the public on this change, what the requirements are going to be, what can be brought in, what can't be brought in, just so the public's aware. But we're looking at, like I said, late September, early October is our goal. There's a lot of work that we need to do to get this in place. We're hoping to have the lieutenant promoted by July 1st, and that'll give us an opportunity to train that person, take him or her to other courthouses that are similar size. So we've got some good ideas of what we need to do to get this program going. But very happy that we're moving that direction, and I can't thank our county board enough taking that step and moving forward and trusting us to man this and making our courthouse secure.
talking about courthouse security in Wood County with the Sheriff Shawn Becker. I'm surprised how long it takes. Do you anticipate closing certain entrances, or is this going to look like a TSA walkthrough? Do I have to put my keys and things in I mean, what you've just said here tells me that you're going to go and take a look at other people, so I don't know that you know exactly how this is all going to look. But
that's a very fair comparison with what TSA does at our airports. That would be almost exactly to a T what we're probably going to be doing with sworn deputies. No weapons allowed. Obviously, firearms, knives, things of that nature won't be allowed, in scissors or anything. Take a look at Marathon County's Facebook page or website, and you can see what they've confiscated since they started their program, which was fairly recently. So that's something similar that we're going to look at their facility, also Portage County. We've been doing a lot of research already on how we want to get this going. Now we're just at that point where it's going to happen. It'd be great if it happened tomorrow, but we have to hire staff. Fortunately, we started a new deputy sheriff eligibility list. Right now, the next phase of that, all the candidates took a written test, a physical fitness test, which was new for us. We've never done that before, but we sat down as an administration, felt, when people get into law enforcement and they go to a law enforcement academy, you're now required to pass a physical fitness test to get into the academy. Then you have to pass another physical fitness test once you graduate, which you have to improve during the time that you're going through the academy. We felt, all right, let's take the entrance standards and have people go through that, and that is a pass-fail. So we did that a few weeks ago. The next phase now is our Civil Service Commission will interview the candidates. That's going to happen early next month, and then they forward the names of the top candidates, and then we interview them from there, background check them, physical with a doctor, and then a psychological exam. So it takes time. We can't say, okay, let's put you on right now and you can start working. It's a several month-long process. And then on top of that, they have to go through a field training program with our department, which is usually about 10 plus weeks. So from start to finish, we're not going to get that person ready to go for probably 3-4 months. So it takes a while for getting people going on solo patrol and then getting somebody slid into that position in courthouse security.
Talking about the physical fitness part of it, I just wondered at Marshfield Clinic commercial where they had the mall cop who couldn't catch the guy as he was running away. I thought maybe that was, hey, maybe we should do something about that. You got Paul Blart out there trying to chase people down, and he's huffing and puffing and couldn't make it, and you're wondering if they're making fun of you because they think that that's how all law enforcement is. Mm-hmm.
No, we the county has a wellness program that everybody, they're not required to be part of it, but if you do take part of it, you get a break on your insurance premiums, and it's something that we want to keep ourselves in shape because of the nature of the job. There's a lot of things that physically, that is very physically demanding on us, and mentally as well. So it's something that I know me personally. I take pride in working out and trying to stay in shape, even though I had my physical yesterday, and I've got to make some changes, but hey, I'm almost 50, so I understand that. But anyway, that's something that we're moving towards. We felt it's really important. If the state requires it to get into law enforcement academy, I think it's fair enough to require our newly hired or potentially newly hired deputies to pass the same requirements.
Talking with Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker here this final Friday in April, live on AM 1450 WDLB. You can call in 384-2191, 384-2191. You're watching us in video from Marshfield Media Access. You could be watching us on Spectrum Cable Channel 989, or you can go to their YouTube channel. It's Marshfield Media Access now is the name of it. And we will be having programs from time to time here from the WDLB studio. Who did you bring along with you here?
Yeah, he hasn't said much at all today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Joe Zurfluh. I recently was promoted to the supervising investigative division as a lieutenant at the Sheriff's Department.
I was with all these rank changes. I thought maybe he's busted down to sergeant again.
Yeah.
No comment.
So tell me about that. I mean, what does that entail? What does that department mean, and what are how did you get to this position?
Sure. The investigative division handles all investigations beyond, I guess, what the initial patrol deputy would have basically the time and resources to take care of. So burglaries, special like sexual assaults, things like that are maybe a little more sensitive. The division has people trained specifically in certain types of investigations. We have one person who is our computer investigator. He goes through all that specialized training. One that primarily handles juvenile-related investigations, a narcotics officer, and then 3 general investigators, 4 actually, if you include myself, who handle kind of everything. I was the North End investigator. I worked out of the Marshfield office, just a couple blocks from here for 2015, 2016. Then I took a promotion as a patrol lieutenant, supervising one of the night shifts. It's kind of a promotion, but my rank is actually the same. So I just supervise basically the 6 investigators.
I get the impression on the level of Wood County here from watching the best in TV shows that your job is when the deputy or the brings somebody in, and there is, first of all, you have to determine whether or not there's enough to be charged. I get the impression that you work with the DA to make sure he has enough in his file that when he gets into a court that he has what he needs.
That is our job, yes. Obviously, a patrol deputy has to try to remain as available as they can. They do a great job, and there are a lot of investigations that they see to the end. But if you're working, nights and weekends, it's not realistic that you're going to have a whole lot of communication with the district attorney's office. So that's where my division really steps up and kind of bridges that gap and takes the caseload so that our patrol division can respond to emergencies.
You're charged with providing the evidence.
That's correct.
Of whatever the case may be, that it's either there or it's not there. And sometimes the DA can proceed, sometimes he can't, depending upon how he feels he can make that stick, as they say on the TV shows.
Yes, sir. An officer only requests charges. The district attorney ultimately decides whether or not this case is going to move forward or whether it won't. And the amount of evidence available, severity of the crime, things like that are primarily what they look at. So evidence is probably the biggest part of the division, collecting, processing, and securely storing that evidence for trial.
Now, there's not a lot of high-profile cases here in Wood County, not a lot of gunplay. We're happy about that, of course. But then what do you do? I mean, what are typical type cases? I think of things like when the deputy's out on the street, there's 2 main things I look at, whether it's police or sheriff, and that is domestic or traffic. It seems like those 2 avenues take up the majority of your time. You're either you seeing people in vehicles doing stupid things or responding to something that happened, or a case where you have to go someplace and respond to people getting into some sort of altercation. And now your job is to sort that out past the original incident.
Correct. And the advent of the cell phone made our deputies even that much busier, because now you brought up traffic. Traffic complaints happen almost constantly. Dispatch is getting calls all the time, and they have to, assign a city officer or county depending on where that person is or where they might be going. The biggest, I guess, type of crime that I see is, of course, property crimes, burglaries, thefts, things like that. They're constantly happening, whether they're related to drugs or not. There seems to be some correlation. People, maybe don't work. They have a habit, and they will get desperate to try to support that. So the property crimes definitely are easily the biggest thing that we do see. And, sometimes it can take several hours maybe to process, a scene and really look for evidence, fingerprints, DNA evidence, things like that. And you really don't want a patrol officer tied up for that length of time, So that's where the investigator would come in and sometimes even take the initial complaint.
It's been my experience not to mislead people to think that you're going to go to those lengths every time, though. I mean, I'm not going to get DNA or fingerprints off of whatever, small petty larceny type crimes. And people expect, because they watch TV like me, that you're going to come in with your kits and your mass of people and everything's going to be taken in and there'll be prosecution to the highest.
Solve it within the hour, right?
Yes, you got an hour here. We're running out of commercial time, so
right. And no, and that is a struggle, and that's another part of my job is trying to be the person who communicates between the officers and the investigators, and then maybe that victim that. These are people's belongings, in a property crime type situation, and it can get very frustrating. And I completely understand where they're coming from, but you're right. Is it realistic that if you have a chainsaw or something stolen, that we're going to get a whole lot of evidence? Probably not. It really depends, I guess, on the avenue that a suspect may have taken. Sometimes things just. They're just gone, and there's really not a whole lot of physical evidence readily available to tell you maybe how that happened. But
talking with Wood County Investigative Lieutenant Joe Zurfluh here. You can too. 384-2191, 384-2191, live here on WDLB Radio. I'll put you on the spot here. What do you think your crime rate solve is?
Oh, I couldn't give you a percentage, of course, without doing a whole lot of math. But it's pretty good. Generally, property crimes are like you'll have a suspect who sticks to a particular method of operation. I was involved with someone who would steal chainsaws and things like that and try to pawn them. And they basically would go up in the middle of the day, which is the primary time for burglaries, and knock on the door. And when no one answers, they would see if anything was locked. Rarely would that particular situation would they ever force entry or anything like that, but they would walk right in someone's house, maybe looking for cash, pills, things like that lying around. Garages, definitely. There's a lot of tools there, and a lot of people don't keep track of the serial numbers of their belongings, so it makes it extremely difficult to, prove that this was even theirs to begin with. Generally, though, when you have someone like that, who, the law catches up with them eventually, and you solve a lot of different cases just by making one arrest.
That was the impression that I got even from police, is that when something happened, they say, "Oh, I think we know. I think we got a pretty good idea who this is," because the method of operation seems to be similar to either what they're doing or how they're doing it. So you've either got the known no-goodniks, and occasionally you'll get the hit and runs. There was a time here not that long ago in 2018 where car lots, they'd come in and their cars are on blocks. And it wasn't anybody that was in town, because they were hitting different cities, from Merrill to Rapids to Marshfield to Wausau they had a method of operation that they used, and after a while you begin to look for that same vehicle on security cams from around. Do you do that? Try to procure security camera footage from local businesses around?
Absolutely. That's one of the first steps typically the initial responding officer takes. So usually we have that by the time it would be forwarded on for further investigation.
Yeah, if we have a burglary or a theft type situation or any type of investigation that we're going to have follow-up on, that's one of the first things that our deputies, think about after they take the initial complaint. All right, where is this residence located? A lot of residents now have video cameras, and I have one at my house, and that's just right in the neighborhood. And I've been asked before, hey, we had something go on, nearby. Do you have any video footage? And technology is a great thing, and it's reasonable. to get cameras for your residents, and then a lot of our businesses have that, that available. So that's one thing that's changed throughout the years is, okay, all right, ask. Don't forget to ask as a deputy if you're dealing with whatever investigation that's going on. Look for that footage, and lots of people have it. It started with the trail cameras for hunting. Well, why not get something at home? It's for $100. You can put a camera up that links right to your phone, and then when your camera is motion activated, you're seeing that. Our family has a cottage not too far from here, and we put on that ring, and we had an incident go on at 4 a.m. Somebody's at the front door of our family cottage, and it's linked to my phone and my brother-in-law's phone and everybody, and we're all calling each other. Oh, who is that? What are they doing? So we flew over there, and something was going on, and someone was held accountable for it. So it's something that has changed throughout the years, just people having that kind of security system in, and it's very, very affordable.
Do you have, as opposed to PD, when I think of the city, now you're in the county, the rural areas, do you have a lot of porch pirates? Is that something that's becoming more common?
That was a big thing for a while. The packages, people never get them. Some people would get them. And
Christmas
say
is a good shopping time for porches.
It is. If you have something valuable,
sign for it.
Absolutely. Or make arrangements to leave work when you know about the time that it's going to be there, because things will walk away. You mentioned kind of the random, it's out in the open, I'm going to look around. Those types of crimes certainly do happen.
Yes, and to go back a little bit to some of the car shopping thing that you had mentioned, that people target specific vehicles or in parking lots. About a year ago, I took a complaint down in Babcock at a local business down there that somebody went through somebody's car and stole a bunch of money out of it. And the suspects, we thought, these two individuals were responsible for it because, they had unfortunately a record that led us down that to believe that. And it took about a year to solve it, and it wound up not being either one of those individuals we suspected. It was somebody else that was their MO. They were driving through Babcock and saw a parking lot with some vehicles parked there, stopped in there, looked through all the vehicles. One, unfortunately, was left unlocked, and he had over $1,000 in there in cash, and then she stole it. And she got caught doing something similar to that in Juneau County, and then they notified us, hey, do you have any similar cases? And connected it, yeah, and she wound up confessing to that. So it took a year to get closure to this, and took us in a total different direction.
What are the chances of recovery? I mean, with cash is pretty low, but I mean, even with property, is there a chance? And do you have a evidence room that you put back out for people to come get their stuff, or?
Yeah, we're found property. We're required to hold for at least 30 days. Typically, it's much longer than that.
Are you required to let the people know who you think it is?
If we know, then yes. Of course, we're not going to say, we found $1,092.23. Is this yours? We'd make them try to tell us how much it was, and describe the item or whatever. But it really depends, I guess, when the person that takes it, what they ultimately end up doing with it. If they pawn it or something like that, the odds are a little better that we might find it. If this person knows their serial number, we can just contact the place directly, and they'll let us know if they have it or not. That's happened before. If there are no physical identifying characteristics, though, the odds are not really good, unless it's a unique item or something like that.
Well, you mentioned serial numbers before. Is that a upside?
Yes, and if the best way you can protect yourself is just making sure your house, your vehicle, everything is always locked. Rural areas are targeted specifically by people. Sometimes by con men. They'll drive around until they see maybe an elderly couple that they can do some work for that it's never actually done, but the person pays them. Keeping things locked will keep the honest person honest. There's going to be, at the very least, obvious signs that someone was in here, because they're going to have to break their way in. And not leaving valuable items in places like cars. Keep them on your person, keep them at home in a safe that cannot be carried out. So bolt it to the floor if you have to, or get one that's just big and would take forever for someone to remove. Just steps like that. A lot of people, they don't like to lock their house because they've never done it for years and they've never had a problem, but it just takes one time.
All right. We'll wrap things up here. Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker, Investigative Lieutenant Joe Zurfluh on today's Insight program. AM 1450 WDLB's Inside program for this final Friday in the month of April here, coming to you sometime in the future as you're watching us on Marshfield Media Access. It's the same place, 989, 990, and 991 on your Spectrum Digital tier in Marshfield, but a new name. You can look them up on their Facebook page. It's Marshfield Media Access now, as well as on the YouTube channel. Marshfield Media Access is the name to remember. And the final Friday of the month, Wood County Sheriff Shawn Becker avails himself to you and I to talk to here about the business of the citizenry of Wood County. I didn't say much about it because I don't know where to go, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the situation of finding a deceased baby in the trunk of a car. Your department was involved in that, I presume, because it was across, and it wasn't in the city. I mean, the couple.
Right. The couple that were responsible lived out in the county in the Milledore area, and Marshfield Police Department dealt with it initially, and very, emotional, hard case to talk about. It's really hard. It's been hard on our organization, hard on the community. But one thing I can say is, everybody, working together collaboratively made a big difference here. It didn't change the outcome, unfortunately, but working together, I'm confident that a couple of people are going to be held accountable for their terrible actions. And, I got to give a lot of credit to the Marshfield Police Department, the state, with their investigators that helped us out, our coroner, and then Marshfield Medical Center. Did everything they could to help that child survive, and it didn't happen. But very, very tough, emotional case. We've been keeping an eye on our staff as they work through this hard investigation, making sure their wellness is being taken care of. We've been working with Human Services and Crisis and providing debriefs for our staff, and combining that not only just exclusively to our staff, but to anybody that was involved. And that includes the officers from Marshfield, the folks over at Marshfield Medical Center, and just keeping an eye on them, because that's a tough one. In my career, I really don't see anything worse, right now that comes to mind. Obviously, this is very fresh in our minds, and so that really brings a lot of emotion to it, because we've had a lot of hard investigations throughout our career, but this one is just it's really hard. But we're moving forward. It's going to be a long road as we move forward in the legal system, because both parents will be most likely in our facility for quite some time before there's a trial. So we've got to make sure that their safety is considered and taken care of while they're in our facility, before they move on wherever that might be. But I appreciate you bringing it up. But I just got to say that the community and organizations and other law enforcement agencies coming together to work hard and move forward with this case is very commendable. I wish it didn't happen, but it just shows working together will only makes us stronger.
Yep. Thank you for your time, Shawn Becker, Wood County Sheriff, Investigative Lieutenant Joe Zurfluh. Thank you for visiting with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Here on today's Insight program, coming to you also on Marshfield Media Access.